So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down how the fluidity in Ten Hag's possession shape caused Nottingham Forest problems defensively, and how United were able to steamroll them so comfortably, whilst also briefly discussing the individual performances of the likes of Casemiro, Marcus Rashford and Luke Shaw as well. But before I go any further, let me tell you why you should consider downloading the OneFootball app, because it's become my all-in-one place for keeping up to date with the latest football news, whilst also being able to follow Manchester United specifically, giving me access to all the latest news, videos and articles. It's also the best place to keep up to date with any live football, as during the World Cup they had a live ticker for any updates on the match, confirmation for the lineups as well as a rating for each player, and also all the team stats you need as well to get a better in-depth view of how the game played out rather than just the goals scored. So if you want to support the channel and think you'd also be interested in looking at the OneFootball app, I'll leave it linked in the description and comments below. So the pattern of play in this game was set pretty early on, with Nottingham Forest defending in a very passive 4-3-3 shape, with the front three of Brennan Johnson and Awani either side of Lingard, essentially just allowing United to build out through their defensive third and looking to cut the passing lanes into players behind them. And so this was one of those games where United had to worry more about breaking down the opposition's deep defensive block, rather than having to work the ball out of their defensive third under an aggressive press. And this is the exact type of tactical gameplay that we've seen United come up against and struggle against over the past few seasons. Both Solskjaer, Rangnick and even Mourinho before them had trouble trying to break down deep defensive blocks like the one that Nottingham Forest were using. However, Erik Ten Hag is a much better in-possession tactician than any of those three managers. And so when United did have the ball in the middle third against Nottingham Forest's narrow 4-3-3, we did see United use their familiar 2-3-4-1 shape, which also interchanges with a 3-2-4-1 as well, when United want to drop a player into that back line, allowing them to circulate the ball around Nottingham Forest's front line. However, it wasn't simply the possession shape that allowed United to break down Nottingham Forest, it was the positional fluidity and movement which drew players out of position, allowing United to break through. See, with Nottingham Forest defending in a very narrow 4-3-3 shape, this tells me that they were concerned about defending the central positions, happy to afford United space on the flanks and have the two wide players, Awani and Brennan Johnson, retain more central positions, which in theory would give them more bodies in central areas, making it harder for United to progress the ball through the centre of the pitch. And this probably would have worked if United had gone with a static possession shape. Against a two-person front line, say in a 4-4-2, then we often see United drop into a back three, as this gives them an extra man and a wider base to circulate the ball around that front line. However, because Nottingham Forest were using a narrow front three rather than a front two, playing a back three does allow the Nottingham Forest forward line to match up and press United man to man. But when United drop into a 2-3 shape with Wan-Bissaka and Malacia holding slightly wider positions either side of Johnson and Awani, then this stretches that front three, opening up the spaces between the two wide players and Lingard. But it was United's positional interchange in deep areas which allowed them to break through Nottingham Forest. We would often see Malacia start out wide, but as the ball would get shifted across that back line to Luke Shaw, we would then see Malacia move infield, creating a double pivot with Casemiro, which in turn would also allow Christian Eriksen to push up between the lines sitting behind the Nottingham Forest central midfield. But also, if Brennan Johnson decided to hold a narrower position and cut off the passing lane from Shaw to Malacia, then this would open up a direct passing lane from Shaw all the way out to Rashford high on the left flank. And this worked because we are used to seeing fullbacks stretch the pitch when the ball comes over to their side, and so when the ball got shifted out to Luke Shaw, Brennan Johnson on the right side is expecting the ball to go out to the flank, but as he's moving out wider to close down the space on the flank, Malacia does the alternative. He moves infield off of Brennan Johnson's blind side and takes up a position between Johnson and Lingard, opening up that passing lane into the midfield. And it was this sort of positional fluidity that Nottingham Forest really struggled with. See, Steve Cooper would have prepared Nottingham Forest defensively to come up against United's 2-3-4-1 shape, also knowing that they can move to a back three which would create a 3-2-4-1 as well. However, the constant changing of positions and just the overall positional fluidity in United's shape makes it incredibly hard for Nottingham Forest to stay set in their defensive shape, and they were getting pulled apart all over the place. And it wasn't just on the left side with Malacia, Eriksen and Rashford where we did see this positional fluidity. We also saw it on the right side as Bruno Fernandes sometimes would drop very deep, and this would act as a signal for Aaron Wan-Bissaka to make an inverted run ahead of Bruno Fernandes, taking up a position almost in the half space at times. We would also see both Rashford and Antony move infield into narrow positions a lot earlier on in the possession phase, giving both Wan-Bissaka on the right and Malacia on the left the chances to overlap and push forward down the flanks. And this is quite a change from what we saw in the first part of the season, as usually Ten Hag instructs Antony and Rashford, or whoever else is on the flanks, to hold their advance width, creating a very wide front three. However, in this game we saw a much narrower front three, and this contributed to United's positional fluidity even more. We saw Martial dropping off from that front line, dropping deep, receiving a pass and laying it off quickly, and whilst this does seem kind of insignificant, what it actually does is it draws a centre back out of the back line, potentially opening up space for one of the two narrow wingers, Rashford or Antony, or even Bruno Fernandes, who we did see making those penetrating runs ahead of Anthony Martial's deeper movement in behind the back line. However, ironically, United's first two goals, which came midway through the first half, came from different circumstances rather than United breaking down Nottingham Forest's deep defensive block. The first came from a well-worked corner routine. We see that everyone has bunched to the 6-yard box, leaving the space just around the penalty area, and Marcus Rashford starts at the back post. And Bruno Fernandes' role in this goal is crucial. He appears to block off Marcus Rashford's marker, allowing Rashford to make a run around the main pack in the 6-yard box, and Eriksen's low delivery towards the penalty spot is weighted perfectly, allowing Rashford to come onto it first time and side foot the ball with all the power already on the ball, putting it well beyond Hennessy in goal and giving United a 1-0 lead. And the second goal came from a quick transition in attack, which if you have watched some of my Manchester United analysis videos before, I will leave them all linked below. The most recent ones are obviously the Burnley game and the Fulham game, which happened just before the World Cup, so they'll be in the description. You can check them out after this video. But in those videos and even videos before, I've spoken about how United are most dangerous when they transition the ball quickly, and this is because of a few different factors. Obviously they have Rashford and Antony to make those forward runs ahead of play, or they can even carry the ball forward themselves. And Bruno Fernandes is fantastic at receiving the ball in behind the opposition's midfield line and threading those through balls for the likes of Rashford and Antony. However, now Ten Hag has both Eriksen and Martial in the side. Eriksen has a long passing ability, which you'll see when I analyse the second goal, but Martial's ability to drop off from the forward line and link the play with quick interplay, 1 and 2 touch, moving the ball quickly and dragging the opposition centre back out of the back line, also speeds up United's attack and opens up space for the likes of Rashford, Fernandes and Antony to break into. And we did see Christian Eriksen's long passing ability when he receives the ball on the left flank and plays a fantastic lofted pass over the advanced Aurier, who's allowed Rashford to make the run in behind him. Rashford does fantastic down the left flank, gets to the edge of the box, cuts back in, plays a ball across the edge of the box to Martial, and Martial does do well to keep the ball on target, get the ball between the defender's legs, hitting it first time, but I do think Hennessy should do better. But Martial's shot placement is pretty good and Hennessy can't do much apart from pushing the ball into the bottom left hand corner. And after the second goal went in, United had full control of the game, and we can see this clearly from the XG chart, as United ended the game with an XG of 2.14, with Nottingham Forest recording just 0.48, showing just how dominant United were, and it all stemmed from Ten Hag's possession system. However, whilst we do have to credit the system and the team as a whole, we should talk about some of the individual performances as well, as really Nottingham Forest offered nothing in possession. United pressed in their usual 4-2-3-1, but really we didn't see it in full action because of the opposition they were facing. But in terms of standout performers, it has to be Casemiro and Rashford as the main two. I thought Casemiro was fantastic throughout the match. Defensively, he was fantastic, being that shuttling defensive midfielder who moves across and puts in tackles, just as he did for the second goal, putting in a well-timed tackle on the edge of his own box, allowing United to win the ball back and then counter quickly, but also in possession I thought he was fantastic as well. He doesn't play those killer through balls that we see Bruno Fernandes play, or those long Hollywood passes that Eriksen can play, but he keeps things simple, moving the ball around with maximum efficiency, rarely taking more than 1 or 2 touches, and I actually think this is very underrated in a central midfielder. When Fred and McTominay were in central midfield, it seemed like they couldn't do anything without at least taking 2 touches to get themselves set. And the effect of this is that with the ball static in one position for too long, this allows the opposition side to shuttle across, regain their defensive shape, closing off the spaces that could be there if Fred or McTominay had moved the ball quickly, but also allows opposition players to move closer towards them and apply the pressure. And this is why over the years United have struggled so heavily with playing out of aggressive presses, because they didn't have a player like Casemiro or even Christian Eriksen who can move the ball quickly. And I think that central midfield double pivot is what really sets apart Ten Hag's Manchester United side and the previous United sides under Ranić and Solskjaer. Whilst Casemiro was fantastic from a defensive and possession circulation point of view, it was Marcus Rashford who made the difference offensively. In this game, the previous game against Burnley, during the World Cup for England, and previously even before the World Cup, it seems like Marcus Rashford has regained that confidence, that composure, and that technical ability that he seemed to have lost last season. He did fantastically well to hit that ball as he did first time when Eriksen plays the corner. He knows the pace is already on the ball and all he's got to do is guide it past Hennessy, which he does fantastically. It's one of those chances where if it came to him last season, he probably would have skied it completely over the bar. But in this rich vein of form, which I think is now 10 goals in 10 games, he has the perfect connection, and even for the second goal, his touch from Eriksen's pass, and even the run to get away from Aurier, the cut back and the ball across to Martial, it now seems like Rashford's gone up not one, but maybe 2 or even 3 levels from where he was last season. He looks like a completely different player. I was also very interested to see Luke Shaw at left-sided centre-back. I will do a different video on him so I can cover him in more depth, about him or potentially Casemiro filling in at centre-back during certain phases of the season. So I won't go into that too much here, also because I don't think he was really tested defensively. From an offensive point of view, we did see his passing range. I would have also liked to see him carry the ball out a little bit more, but maybe he was instructed by Ten Hag to remain alongside Varane. But that is definitely something tactically that I'm very interested to see. So if you do want me to do a more in-depth tactical analysis of Luke Shaw at centre-back, Casemiro at centre-back, whether Aaron Wan-Bissaka has a future at United, then tell me in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any of my videos. But to conclude, from a tactical point of view, I thought this game was the first time I've seen the whole system move fluidly, everyone interchanging positions. We saw even Bruno Fernandes dropping deep, Martial dropping deep, which is something we hadn't really seen too much under Ten Hag before. But even the likes of Malacia and Aaron Wan-Bissaka pushing forward, ending up in the half space. Ten Hag also allowing Rashford and Antony, the 2 wide attackers, who in previous games before the World Cup were instructed to hold their advance width until the final third, are now being encouraged to move infield earlier on in the build-up phase, which allows the fullbacks to overlap. And the rotation in positions between the likes of Eriksen, Rashford and Malacia on the left, and Bruno Fernandes, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Antony on the right, caused Nottingham Forest's defensive and midfield lines all sorts of problems with who's picking up who. And it's this sort of positional interchange and fluidity throughout the whole system that, if applied consistently throughout the next part of the season, is going to take United's possession system to the next level. And this is because whilst United are still fantastic on the counter-attack and when transitioning the attack quickly, the majority of the time United are going to have to pick up points when they have to break down these deep defensive units, and the more fluid and less static the actual system and the shape is, the harder it is for the opposition to maintain a compact shape and stop you being able to break through. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, check out some of my other videos which will be in the description, and put your thoughts on the game in the comments section below.